Remember when Matthew McConaughey watched 23 years of messages and couldn't hold himself together? When a rectangular robot stole the film? Interstellar redefined science fiction, but it almost never existed. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts you never knew about Interstellar. Number 15. Most viewers remember young Tom Cooper as the quiet, resentful older brother who never understood why Murph was the child their father truly saw. What most people do not know is that the actor playing him thought he was going to be the lead. Timothée Chalamet was 17 when he was cast. After booking the part, he found Jonathan Nolan's original 2008 script online. That draft centered on a father and son relationship, not father and daughter. Chalamet recalled at a 2026 Variety event with McConaughey. The original story was about a father and his son, so I thought, oh man, I made it. And then, obviously, they reworked it, and young Tom was a smaller part. Christopher Nolan had rewritten the script before production, changing Murph from a boy to a girl, reportedly inspired by his own daughter. That decision shifted the emotional center of the film away from Tom entirely. During the video messages sequence, Chalamet reportedly resisted Nolan's direction on tone and played the scene his own way. Nolan later acknowledged at an IMAX retrospective, "I told you about it, and you went ahead and did whatever you wanted and carried on." Chalamet said he wept for an hour after seeing the finished film. Tom's visible resentment in those messages is a 17-year-old channeling real personal disappointment into a character who genuinely feels forgotten. Nolan kept the take. Up next, those elderly faces at the start of the film, not one of them is an actor. Number 14. Interstellar opens on documentary-style testimonials. Elderly men and women in simple rooms recalling dust storms, failed harvests, and communities that vanished. They look exactly like footage from a PBS documentary. That is because they are. Those are not actors. They are real Dust Bowl survivors taken directly from Ken Burns and Dayton Duncan's 2012 PBS documentary, The Dust Bowl. This was the first time in Ken Burns' career that footage from one of his documentaries was licensed for a narrative feature film. Burns and Duncan insisted on reading the full script before agreeing, but Nolan's secrecy was so strict that a producer had to hand-deliver the script, sit in the room, and wait while they read every page before taking it back. Paramount then had to obtain individual clearance from each surviving interview subject. Only Ellen Burstyn appears among them as a performer, playing elderly Murph. Her scenes blend so seamlessly with the real testimonials that most viewers never notice. Nolan explained to Stephen Colbert, "Even though it's a science fiction film, I wanted the feeling of dread, the feeling of imbalance between the human race and the planet to be real and credible. Interstellar's apocalypse is not imagined. It is borrowed from lived American history. And the opening testimonials carry a completely different emotional weight once you know those are real people describing real loss." Next, the poem Michael Caine recites 4 times connects him to the man who wrote it in a way almost no one knows. Number 13. If you have seen Interstellar even once, do not go gentle into that good night. Already lives somewhere in your brain. Professor Brand delivers that recitation 4 separate times across the film, functioning like a philosophical spine. But here is what makes Caine's delivery genuinely remarkable. According to Caine in a Vulture interview, the poem was not in the original script. It was added during production. And Caine did not research Dylan Thomas to prepare. He knew the man personally. Caine told the interviewer, "I knew him, but he didn't know me. He was always drunk when you met him. He was a fabulous poet. He was just around in the bars and clubs in London." Thomas wrote the poem in 1947, watching his own father go blind and surrender before the end. Caine understood that weight not from any research, but from direct personal memory, having watched the poet drink his way through 1950s London while producing some of the most visceral verse in the English language. This was Caine's 6th collaboration with Christopher Nolan, a partnership beginning with Batman Begins that would eventually span 8 feature films across nearly 2 decades. Every time those lines play, Caine is reciting words by someone he personally watched in those bars. The gravitas is not performed distance, it is the weight of actual memory. Next, the way McConaughey landed this role reads like something from a spy thriller. Number 12. Cooper feels like inevitable casting. A plain-spoken former pilot who fixes things and happens to be exactly right for an impossible job. The casting almost did not happen. Nolan first became interested in McConaughey after watching an early cut of Mud, the 2012 Jeff Nichols indie drama. McConaughey recalled Nolan approaching him afterward and simply repeating, "Mud." Loved that performance in Mud. Really loved that performance in Mud. Their first formal meeting at Nolan's home lasted 2.5 hours. Nolan never mentioned the film once. McConaughey left with no idea what the conversation had been about. Nolan then visited the True Detective set in New Orleans and expressed concern that his candidate was committed to a television series. When the script finally arrived, a messenger appeared at the set, passed a locked briefcase through a fence, and waited while McConaughey spent 5.5 hours reading every page before the briefcase was taken back. This was the peak of what critics called the McConaissance, a term coined by New York Magazine's Rachel Syme to describe McConaughey's transformation from romantic comedy fixture into one of the most respected dramatic actors working. Nolan chose him based on Mud specifically, not Dallas Buyers Club, not True Detective. His quietest performance landed him the biggest role of his reinvention. Cooper's plain-spoken reliability was a deliberate decision built on one understated indie film. Next, the farm at the center of this story is geographically impossible, and it made money anyway. Number 11. One of the most striking images in Interstellar is the farm. 500 acres of golden corn stretching toward distant mountains, a portrait of American agriculture at the edge of collapse. It is a beautiful shot. It also should not exist. Corn is killed by mountain wind patterns, which is why cornfields and mountain backdrops do not coexist in real agricultural practice. Production designer Nathan Crowley planted it anyway outside Calgary, Alberta, at roughly $100,000. Specialists warned the crop might fail before cameras rolled. Nolan had seen a version of this while producing Man of Steel for Zack Snyder, where a smaller cornfield was planted for the Kent family farm, and decided to scale it up. The crop survived. When production wrapped and the corn was sold, it returned approximately $162,000, meaning Nolan's impossible cornfield generated a net profit. Then, the story required the field to burn. Crew members noted that green corn does not naturally ignite. Nolan's reported response, "Well, in our movie, it does." The full production came in $10 million, under its $165 million budget. Every wide shot of that farm is a location that should not exist, planted in defiance of agricultural logic, sold for more than it cost, and then set on fire because the story required it, all for a movie about leaving Earth behind. Next, inside every spacecraft interior in this film, something is completely missing, and almost no one notices. Number 10. Think about those cockpit shots. McConaughey and Hathaway looking through spacecraft windows at stars, at the wormhole, at Gargantua rotating in enormous silence. Your brain assumes green screen behind those windows. There was not. Christopher Nolan banned the technique from the production entirely. Not one frame of Interstellar was filmed against green screen. VFX supervisor Paul Franklin developed a modern version of the front projection system Stanley Kubrick pioneered for 2001, A Space Odyssey. 2 Barco digital projectors, each weighing 600 pounds and outputting 40,000 lumens, were converged onto enormous screens directly outside the spacecraft windows, displaying pre-rendered space imagery that Double Negative had created before a single actor stepped onto set. The actors received real light from real rendered imagery and reacted to visuals physically present in the room. 150 shots in the finished film required no additional compositing whatsoever. What the camera captured is exactly what ended up on screen. The trade-off was enormous. Without green screen, VFX artists had to manually rotoscope every visual element at full IMAX resolution, frame by frame, across the entire picture. Nolan made that choice because he wanted his actors genuinely lit by the cosmos they were supposed to be traveling through. Every reflection on a helmet visor, every shift of light across McConaughey's face in that cockpit, that light was physically present in the room when the camera rolled. Next, the camera that captured those moments was never designed to be carried by a human being. Number 9. One of the things separating Interstellar from most science fiction is physical weight. The way it moves from close-ups to planetary wide shots with a gravity that makes the genre feel weightless. Much of that comes down to one decision the industry would have called impossible. Hoyte van Hoytema replaced Wally Pfister, who had left to direct Transcendence, beginning a collaboration extending through Dunkirk, Tenet, and Oppenheimer. Van Hoytema wanted to shoot IMAX footage handheld. Nobody had attempted it on a feature. The camera was not built for that. He modified it anyway, stripping components until it could sit on a human shoulder, weighing between 70 and 80 pounds. Van Hoytema later said, "I was very determined to get the bloody thing on my shoulder." I ended up shooting most of the IMAX stuff handheld. I think it was more about just a will to do it than anything else. An IMAX camera was also mounted inside the nose cone of a Learjet for aerial work, and additional cameras were bolted onto spacecraft miniatures built at 46 to 49 feet long to accommodate IMAX equipment. 1/3 of the film was shot on 65mm IMAX, more than any previous Nolan production. That organic drift in the handheld spacecraft shots is not a small camera simulating weight. It is an 80-pound IMAX instrument on one person's shoulder because he refused to use a rig. Next, the most divisive speech was first performed in a way Nolan told the actress was completely wrong. Alright, we're at the halfway mark, and things are about to get even wilder. Before we hit the top 8, drop your favorite Interstellar quote or moment in the comments. And if you're enjoying this, smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel grow. Number 8. If you have ever tried to get two people to agree about Interstellar, the disagreement often came down to one scene. Amelia Brand arguing that love is a real observable force capable of crossing dimensions that science has not yet learned to measure. Some critics called it the film's philosophical core. Others called it its weakest moment. What almost nobody knew is that the version audiences saw was not filmed first. Anne Hathaway told the Globe and Mail what happened. She attacked the speech from this very dramatically inflated place on the first day of shooting, delivering it with full theatrical intensity. After that day, Nolan gave her one note: "It's good. I don't think it's right. I think you should go home and have a think about it just being simpler." Hathaway returned the next day and delivered the version in the finished film, stripped down, grounded, nearly conversational. Hathaway described Brand's arc as moving from arrogance to humility and theory to presence, and acknowledged it could have gone badly in either direction. The speech was in Jonathan Nolan's original draft from the beginning, never a studio note or a late insert. It was always the film's core philosophical argument. The challenge was finding the one register in which something that ambitious could survive on screen. Nolan understood it had to be spoken like a confession, not a declaration. Next, that wisecracking rectangular robot? There is a real human being physically inside it. Number 7. Cars is one of the great scene-stealing characters in modern science fiction. Monolithic, articulated, armed with an adjustable honesty setting, and dry humor that catches you off guard. No face. The most beloved character in a film full of people navigating the end of the world. TARS and counterpart Case were not computer-generated. They were fully practical 200-pound articulated metal puppets operated on set by actor Bill Irwin, known to children as Mr. Noodle from Sesame Street's Elmo's World. Irwin both voiced the robots and operated their movements through every environment, including walking through nearly 2 feet of glacial water in Iceland. Nolan said, "I referred to them as articulated machines because I wanted my crew to stop thinking of your standard idea of a robot." TARS operated in 3 distinct configurations: an ape-like walk, a crutch walk where 2 outer legs moved while the center rotated, and a fully independent 4-limb mode. Digital effects were used only when the robots performed physically impossible actions. And in those shots, VFX work consisted primarily of removing Irwin and his support rods from frame. Special effects coordinator Scott Fisher noted, "Most film directors would look at that character and instantly think CG. But he instantly thought, let's do as much practical as we can." Every scene where TARS walks, pivots, or folds is a performer wrestling 200 pounds of metal across alien terrain. Next, the most visceral sequence was built around a camera bolted to something about to explode. Number 6. The docking sequence is one of the great tension set pieces in recent science fiction. The Endurance tumbling wildly after Dr. Mann's explosion, Cooper fighting to match its rotation while Hans Zimmer's organ builds underneath. Visceral in a way most digital sequences simply are not. The Endurance was a physical miniature, a 25-foot model at 1/15th scale by New Deal Studios under VFX supervisor Ian Hunter, part of a fleet of models large enough to accommodate actual IMAX cameras mounted directly on their surfaces. For the explosion, Nolan insisted on attaching a VistaVision camera to the pyrotechnic model before detonation. Hunter worried the camera would be destroyed. Nolan's position was direct. Yes, but you need to attach the model to the camera. The spinning station was suspended horizontally and inverted, with the camera on the underside. When flipped in editing, the station appeared to tumble above rather than below. A full-scale motorized airlock piece was separately built and physically lowered onto the cockpit set during shooting, giving actors real rotating geometry through their windows with no digital replacement required. Fewer than 10% of all spacecraft shots across the entire film were fully computer-generated. The kinetic violence of that docking sequence is partly mechanical. The camera is literally attached to objects physically spinning, detonating, and being lowered by crane operators in real time. Next, the black hole at the center of this film did not just look scientifically accurate, it accidentally advanced real science. Number 5. Gargantua might be the most scientifically accurate visual in film history. The massive spinning black hole, its accretion disk glowing at a 45-degree tilt, light bending in rings no film had ever rendered. Double Negative wrote new rendering software called DNGR, the double negative gravitational renderer, built to trace light through the curved spacetime of a spinning black hole using physicist Kip Thorne's equations of general relativity. Standard software assumes light travels in straight lines. DNGR traced curved paths following the geometry of warped space, a technique never used in film production before. Individual close-up frames took between 100 and 120 hours to render, and total data output was approximately 800 terabytes. The simulation produced 2 peer-reviewed papers in classical and quantum gravity, and the American Journal of Physics, co-authored by Thorne, alongside double-negative researchers Oliver James, Eugenie von Tunzelmann, and Paul Franklin. One paper predicted gravitational lensing behavior near spinning black holes, confirmed when the Event Horizon Telescope photographed the first real black hole in 2019. Thorne received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2017. Nolan made one deliberate compromise. The most accurate version included extreme Doppler brightening he felt would confuse audiences, and he removed it. Gargantua is a mathematical simulation that produced publishable science, and the real black hole photographed 5 years later bore a striking resemblance to what this team had rendered. Next, one of Hollywood's biggest stars agreed to appear in total secrecy, and Nolan's pitch was completely disarming. Number 4. There is a kind of movie-going experience that only works once. A cryopod opens on an ice planet. A bearded face appears. Audiences understood something had shifted in a way no trailer had telegraphed. Matt Damon's casting as Dr. Mann was kept out of all promotional material. Nolan's pitch was direct. Damon recalled in a joint appearance with Ben Affleck, "Chris is very direct. He said, 'You know they say there are no small parts, there are only small actors.' And I'm going, 'Yeah.' And he says, 'This is a small part.'" Nolan conceived Dr. Mann as a version of Colonel Kurtz from Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, a legendary figure everyone speaks of with reverence, whose reality proves a devastating letdown. Nolan was explicit about why Damon was right. "Matt has the most amazing ability to project integrity and warmth. For me to realize that he's a frail human being and subject to cowardice and all the terrible weaknesses that we all have, he loved that challenge." The casting partially leaked 15 months before release, but most publications honored the embargo. Producer Emma Thomas said, "If people get to watch the film twice, it's so great watching Matt when you know what's really going on. Every warm smile Damon delivers after emerging from cryo is Nolan weaponizing audience trust, casting the most reassuring face in Hollywood so the betrayal would feel personal." Next, the studio deal financing this film involved one of the strangest franchise trades in Hollywood history. Number 3. When you see the studio logos at the start of Interstellar, most viewers do not think twice. Those logos represent one of the most unusual arrangements in modern Hollywood, one requiring horror franchises and superhero financing to change hands. Interstellar originated at Paramount in 2006. The problem was that Nolan's long relationship was with Warner Brothers, which had distributed his Dark Knight trilogy and Inception for a combined gross approaching $3 billion. When Nolan signed on, Warner Brothers traded franchise assets to Paramount, the rights to co-finance the next Friday the 13th film, a share of a future South Park theatrical release, and a commitment allowing Paramount to co-finance a future Warner Brothers A-list production. Separately, Legendary Pictures, simultaneously ending its 8-year Warner Brothers partnership, negotiated a 25% stake in Interstellar worth approximately $41 million. According to multiple industry reports, Legendary gave up its financing position on Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice in exchange for its share. The Guardian described the deal as reversing the normal operating logic of Studio Hollywood. The Hollywood Reporter covered the arrangement with a headline capturing its absurdity. The final structure had Paramount handling domestic release and Warner Brothers handling international. Those two studio logos represent the moment two major studios and multiple franchises were rearranged simply to get one director on an original story. Next, the film Nolan made is almost unrecognizable from the 6-year development version, and the original draft had aliens in it. Number 2. Everything audiences love most about Interstellar, the father-daughter bond, the 3 alien worlds, the human betrayal, the ending built on love rather than cosmic horror, none of it existed in the original version. The project spent 6 years under Steven Spielberg, built around a Jonathan Nolan screenplay, bearing almost no resemblance to the finished film. Linda Obst and physicist Kip Thorne originated the concept in 2006. They had been friends since Carl Sagan introduced them on a blind date. Jonathan Nolan spent 4 years writing, including a period studying general relativity at Caltech. In that version, Murph was a boy. Christopher Nolan changed Murph to a girl, reportedly inspired by his own daughter Flora, for whom the production was given the code name Flora's Letter. The original script visited only one alien world. The ocean planet, time dilation sequences, and multiple destinations were Christopher Nolan's additions. Instead of Dr. Mann, the crew discovered a Chinese base camp, remnants of a mission that perished after diverting through the wormhole. Jonathan Nolan's draft included fractal alien organisms beneath the ice planet. Christopher Nolan removed all alien life. Spielberg departed when DreamWorks relocated to Disney in 2009. Jonathan Nolan recommended his brother, and Christopher Nolan joined in 2012. Nolan described his process. "A lot of my contribution was ripping things out. I spent my time choosing the more emotive and tactile of these ideas." Next, number 1, the scene defining this film and the moment Nolan broke 2 of his own rules. Number 1, you know this scene. Cooper discovers 23 years have passed and watches message after message of his children growing up without him. Nolan broke 2 principles to film it. The first, he filmed McConaughey's close-up before the wide shot. Nolan explained to The Atlantic, "You never do that in a scene. You start with a wide shot and then warm up. But I felt if I did the wide shot first, I would have given Matthew the opportunity to have done the scene already." The second, the messages were pre-recorded and played on monitors in real time. McConaughey refused to watch any of them. McConaughey said, "Take 1 is where you really are reacting. I wanted to see that tape for the first time. I wanted to just receive it. The first take was too raw." Hans Zimmer had composed an organ piece with no assigned placement. Editor Lee Smith placed it over the scene, and both he and Nolan knew it was right. Nolan acknowledged, "It almost breaks the 4th wall, but it felt perfect for that moment." In early 2026, McConaughey told John Mayer on SiriusXM he rewatched it with his son and broke down. McConaughey said, "I'm so glad I don't have to feel that about my children. What you see is not a performance. It is a recording of a man failing to hold himself together, captured by a director who built his process around one condition. The camera would be ready before McConaughey had any idea what was coming." Interstellar, a film where the cornfield turned a profit. The robots were operated by a Sesame Street performer. The black hole generated peer-reviewed scientific papers, and the most powerful moment was a first take so unguarded the director almost could not use it. Nothing about this production was guaranteed. The project changed directors, studios, scripts, and the gender of its central character, and required Hollywood franchises to be traded before a single frame was shot. The version that exists is not the version anyone planned. If this video surprised you, drop your favorite fact in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves this movie as much as you do. And as always, do not go gentle into that good night. We'll see you next time.